Welcome to my channel. During the last lecture, we worked on creating a function notebook, which we use to save all the functions that we're going to use in loading our CSV file. And also, we can save all our functions, all the functions, the import that we're going to use in loading our data. Everything is going to be saved in this notebook. At the same time, we created a flat file helper. This is the notebook that we're going to use to load the CSV file. The first step in this notebook is to load the function. We call the function notebook, the one that I showed you earlier, that pull all the functions and the imports that we have in that notebook. Then after that, we want to validate that we're able to pull everything from that function by printing the cluster name, because as part of the steps that the notebook runs, is going to pull the name of all the, is going to put the name of the cluster that we're currently running on, the ID and the name of the cluster is going to be pulled. So if we're able to run this and we're able to get the name of the cluster, you can be sure that this file, this notebook runs successfully. We use the function that we created in that folder to load the file. The first one is for loading the path. We load all the file that we have into this file path, and we pass the location, the file path, into our load CSV file, and we're able to load the file successfully. Today, we're going to go further because, like I said, in this file location, there's possibility, in fact, is guaranteed that there's going to be more than one file at this location. And if you want to load all of them, running it like this, you're just going to be able to load one, because each time you pass in this variable, it's going to get the file path for the last one, and that's the only one you're going to run. But if we want to be able to load all the files in this folder, one after the other, and make sure that all the rows are loaded into our data frame, we need to make changes to our function. So let's go to our notebook function. So if you look at this function here, this function at the top, the load CSV, we are using this to load the file that we find in each one of these locations. And we're using this file path to get the destination at the location of the file that we want to load here. By running this, we're going to get the file name, and we're going to be able to pass it to this. But if we have multiple files at that location, we want to be able to pull them one by one and load them into this folder. And load them using this function. So in that case, we need to make changes and combine these two functions together, make it as one. So this is what we're going to do. We have this function here that is calling the file path. Then after that, we need to call this function that is going to load it. So if we want to combine the two together, let's go ahead and create a new function. I'm going to call this dev load all CSV. Okay. Then all the function, everything that we do here, going to bring it down. In fact, before that, because we need to first get a file location. So we're going to pass the file location to this. We get all our file locations. Going to get all the files that we have in that location. Let me put this one right here. So this first function part is going to pull all the files that we have in this location, one after the other. Then after that, we're going to pass that into this function that need to load the file. Going to put it just right under this, because as we are pulling each one of these files, we want to load them one after the other. So let me do this again. Now the file is well formatted. So looking at this, we have a file location that we're going to pass into this variable, to this function. So we're going to use the file, this db utility, to get our file location, and we're going to iterate through in the location to get the file name and the file path one after the other. Then after that, we're going to get this file path. Then this file path is what we're going to pass into our file location here. Okay, and this is going to return, after we return the file, we're going to dedupe it, and at the end we're going to return the file that does not contain a duplicate. So that means as we are loading each file that we find at this location, we want to make sure that there is no duplicate in that file before we return it as a df. Now we still need to copy the parameters for this. So need to copy everything from here except the file location. Right here. So what we need to do now is we're going to pass the file location, or these are the default. If we need to change them, we can change them. Then we can use this function to load our file. Now let's test this and see how this works. Okay. For that, let's make sure our cluster is running. So we have the cluster running. As part of this, the first step is for us to load the function. Let's load that. So this is going to pull all the functions that we have in our function notebook. Okay, then let's test it by putting the cluster name. So our cluster name is right. So these are file location name where all our files are are located. So right now, this is what we did last week. We're going to load the file, and at the same time, we want to make sure we load one of the file into our data frame. Like I said earlier, this is just going to guarantee that one of the files that we have at our file location is loaded, because using this method, this function that we have where this is going to pull the file location, and after that, this is going to load one of the file. Okay, we can see we have 22562. Now let's use a new function. So we don't need all this. We're going to use the default for that. Then we need our file path location down here. Now after that, let's load everything into df underscore all files. Okay, and then after that, we're going to count the row. Dot count. So we should get the same count as what we have at the top here. Okay. So now this file is loading, but there's one thing we don't know. We're not sure whether it's loading all the files or it's loading one of the files. So now in order for us to do that, we can add a functionality to our function. Additional functionality to our function to print the name of the files that is being loaded. So let's go back to that and include that functionality in our notebook. So coming down here, this is the file, the part that is loading all the files. Then we want to make sure that by the time we get to this and start loading the file, we want to display the name of the file that is being loaded. So up here, I'm going to write print. So we're going to print the file name and the file path. So we're going to This is the file name right here. So we're going to say right here, loading. Then we're going to add the file path there. So this is going to let us know that we're loading this file. Then once that is successfully loaded, we can come back here and say, okay, we are done with this file load. Say this file name was successfully loaded. Okay, so that is going to give us the information and let us know that, yeah, the file successfully loaded. So let's go back and try this one more time. So first, let's pull the new change. We're going to come down here and run this. So we're loading the first one successfully, load the second. See, we load the two files, and at the end of the day, and once all the files are finished loaded, we decided to remove the duplicate. With this, we're able to load all the files. If you have 50,000 million files in this location, everything is going to be loaded. Then we're going to dedupe it to make sure that we get a data without duplicate. Okay. For those people that been in a data warehouse, when you are loading data into data warehouse or data lake, you want to include some metadata that shows the first time, the date created, when you load the file, the created date, the last time the file was last updated, and hash. The hash make it easy for you to dedupe, to make sure that you're able to remove duplicate. You have to do upsert, because right now, even though we are able to load all this file together, assuming we already have this file in a table and we want to update that table if there's any change to the file, or we want to insert the new row, we have to do what we call offset. In order for you to be able to do that, you want to keep track of when the file was first loaded, the last time you make changes to the file, and the kind of changes that you make, whether you update or you do the insert. So we're going to include that functionality right now into our. So we're going to add additional fields to the file once we return it. Then that will make it easy for us to do offset. Okay. Another cell here, we're going to include the parameter. So let me add the title. It's going to add metadata column. So I'm going to add metadata columns. So first, we're going to add it to the DF files that we load. So everything that we loaded from the location is going to be in this. Then we're going to use that and include the parameter. So if you want to add additional field or additional column to already the field that came with the file, you're just going to write the df that you want to write it to. You're going to use with column. So with column is going to add additional column that you want to add. Then you want to give the name of the column. So we want to give this column as let me see, this is going to be the action. So the action that was taken on the file. Then we're going to give this default, because the first time that we load this file, we're going to have it as insert. Okay, so you're going to do f.lit. So lit is had a default value to a column in Databricks. So this f is part of the function that we had here. Let's go to the function. See, we have this function as f. So I'm using this f because inside this function, inside the PySpark SQL function, we have the function for lead. That lead means I want to write a default to this column, and that is what we're using to insert, to create a column. We're creating a column name action, and we're inserting, we adding by default, had a value of insert to that. Then if we need to add additional column, we can just copy this again and say, okay, we want to add additional one. So the next one is going to be the created date. I mean, the first time that the field was created date, and the value of this is going to be the current time. We want this to be current time, and the functions too is going to be coming from the f. So f is going to be f dot current time. So we want the current date, the timestamp. Then at the same time, we need the last modified date. Okay, that also is going to be current time. The first time we load it is going to be the current time. Okay, it's going to give us the last time. So remember, this is just the first time that we're loading it. When you're loading the data for the first time, you have the created date as the first time you created it, and that is the last time you modified it. And at the same time, we want to include another field. So this field is going to be the one that we're going to use to create the checksum. The checksum is the same thing like a hash. No, that is going to look at all the column that you have in a field, and is going to combine them together and return the hash of those values. Because there's some table that doesn't have primary keys. If there's no primary keys, you don't have anything to make sure the file is not duplicate. When you hash it, the hash is always going to be different. You can use the hash as a primary key, or in addition to another field to identify the uniqueness of each rows. So this is going to be a checksum field. Okay, and the function for that, we're going to use char. So all the field that we have in df all files, everything, we're going to combine them together and create a hash. Now, as you can see in this page, something is wrong with this because I'm repeating the same thing every time, right? df files with column, with column, with column. So we can simplify this by just combining everything together. So I'll come in here, remove that. We can start with column because they're almost the same thing. We remove everything from here. Okay, remove everything from here because that make it duplicate. So we come into this and combine this together and combine them together. Now to make it much more nice, put them all in their own line. Use a backslash to break the line. Okay, backslash, break the line. So right now, what this is going to do for us is, after creating the file, we're going to, after creating the file and remove the duplicate, we're going to add the metadata, and after that, we're going to look at the file. So let's run this to load our file one more time. Okay, then we're going to run this to add field. Okay, I missed one colon. Let's see. Colon. Oh, okay. Need to remove this. Sorry. Run that. Okay, we have another error. Let's concatenate multiple inputs. Okay. First, let's look at our colon. Let's see. Before we try to concatenate them, see what we have. Display. Okay. oh, this one. See, that brings us to one issue that we might have. So a CSV file can be challenging when you're trying to load it. There's some of the columns might not be in the format that you want. Like all these dots, if some of them might have underscore, some of them might have a space in the name, you want to first standardize the name. So one thing we're going to do now is to standardize the name of our field and make sure that all these bad characters are removed. We're going to do that by creating another function. Right here, before we create the function, after loading our file, let's name this one df underscore clean. So because we want to remove any bad character that is in there to clean out the column. Then we're going to get everything from this file. We're going to convert it to df. Want to take it back to the data frame. Then, because we take that to the data frame, then we're going to replace everything in that data frame. Any character that we don't want, we're going to replace it. So what this is going to do for us is we're going to replace, use the function replace to replace anywhere that is underscore, but in this case we want to replace anywhere that we find dot with blank. Want to replace it with blank. Then after that, we're going to loop through all the column that we have in our table, and we're going to make sure we change all of the anywhere we have the dot and replace it with blank. So here we're getting all the files that we have in our data frame, convert it to df. Then we're using this to get all the column. Then we're replacing any dot with blank. So for all the C's that we have in this df column, we're going to replace them. Okay, so then here we're going to return the df clean. Let's test this and see. So we return that, and let's check our df clean to make sure that, see, the dot is gone. So this is how you go and replace this. If there's anything in this column that you want to remove or to standardize the name, you can use these functions. This is going to replace all the field, the bad character that you want. You can add as many as you want. It's going to go through them, look through them, and replace them. So right now that we have a clean column, let's try again and see if we're going to be able to okay. Oh, sorry, I forgot to change the column name because right now we have a different so here we're using the df clean. So df clean this time around because df clean is the one that has the column without the bad characters there. So our df clean, going into this, we have the create date, we have the last modifier, the checksum, to df clean right here too. So let's run this. Cool, we're good right now. Now if we run the df clean again, run the same code that we run here, see, we now have additional column. We have the created date, we have the last modified date, we have the checksum. So which make the difference between this and that. Now, this is now the standard field. This is now looking more like data warehouse, or if you want to do data lake or any kind of data loading, because if you're loading data and you don't have the created date, the last modified date, it's going to be difficult to do auditing on your field because you will know the last time the data was loaded. You don't know if anything changes. You don't know when it changes. But with this is going to make it easy for you to note that. Okay. So let's go and clean our data and make everything look the way we want. So right now we don't need this. I'm going to delete this part because this is just for okay, instead of deleting it, I just hide it. First hide that, hide the title, then hide the result. We don't want that. This one we can delete this because we don't need it. Okay, just need to make sure your note everything is clean. So right now let's add a title to this. So this is going to be loading files. So this part is going to load the file. This is going to remove the bad characters. Then this is just going to count it for us. Then after that, we can now don't need this too. We're going to delete this. And after that, we're going to add the metadata. Then we can see what the data look like here. That is what we're going to do today. Now, in the next lesson, right now that we have our metadata added to the column, we can now be able to do offset. We're going to use a delta format to save our file. We're using a delta. We have the opportunity to use the offset because within a delta, you can update or you can insert, you can add additional field. If the column you have is different, you can add it. So that is what we're going to do. But before we go here, I want to make sure this column are the same thing. So this action, let me change it to the uppercase here. And let's run this again. And make sure we have a clean and standardized table. Okay, this is action, this is it. So this is what I have for you today. The next lesson, we're going to go further and work on our offset. Thank you for joining and see you next time.